It's a pleasure to introduce Ryan Haupt. Ryan's working on his Ph.D. in geology and geophysics, studying the paleoecology of various groups of animals like wolves and crocodiles and sloths, which is cool. But what do wolves and crocodiles and sloths have in common? I asked Ryan, and it's very cool. He actually did his MA at Vanderbilt where he had access to armadillos and sloths, and these animals have no enamel on their teeth. I mean, I didn't even know they had teeth, but they do, but it's just that the teeth have no enamel, which allows you, when you look at their fossils, to make a lot of discoveries about their eating habits. Ryan then wanted to compare these enamel-less animals to carnivorous animals that have major coats of enamel, like mountain lions and like crocodiles. So one day he's researching and he's digging for armadillo fossils in a canal, and he doesn't find armadillo fossils, but he found a ton of crocodile fossils. So that's how crocodiles came into his research agenda. Although I personally think that researching crocodile-infested canals is not the best way to have a long and productive scientific career. Just my thought. He says his life highlight so far has been getting married to Juliana. He said this was his highlight because it's the biggest decision that he made that he had zero worries about, which sounds very sweet. And I saw a wedding photo of the two of them on Facebook, Ryan and Juliana. There they are. She's Swedish, and they got married in the Swedish compound in California, and on their wedding day, he got her a Thor's hammer, a big hammer. And then it's just lest she hit him with it, he got himself a shield to go with her hammer, and there they are on Facebook on their wedding day, two adorable Nordic warriors, very dorky with hammer and shield, and when you look at them, you know right away why Ryan was so confident that they were the perfect match. Also, they met in Costa Rica where Ryan was researching sloths, so just remember that in pursuing knowledge, your life can become beautiful in all kinds of ways. Ryan is most afraid of letting people down and of aliens. He is most confident that he will always be curious and excited to learn new things. So let's welcome Ryan Haupt for his presentation, Abominable, Mythical Monsters and Indomitable, Adaptable Science.
Not just any canal, Peter, the Panama Canal, which Aaron helped dig, apparently. All right, go ahead. Today I want to talk to you about a topic that's very important to me, and that's Yetis. When Jason first asked me to give a talk at this event, I was distracted, I read the message quickly, and I thought he actually wanted me to give a talk about the Abominable Snowman, which I was really excited about, so I said yes. When I realized that wasn't exactly what he wanted, I engaged in some self-reflection to think about why I was so excited to talk about Yetis and cryptozoology in general. I've been told that sometimes I get into too much preamble, so I'll go ahead and give you the conclusion up front and then tell the story of how I got there. Cryptozoology is often in cahoots with creationists, and their explicit goal is to undermine science itself. But why does that matter to me? I'm a paleontologist, and I've been obsessed with animals and fossils since I was a kid growing up in Appalachia, especially those species that may not have even existed. I spent a lot of time learning facts about animals, which to this day makes me a pretty terrible zoo companion. Facts felt really comprehensible and concrete and unchanging, which they're not, but that didn't matter because I also was really interested in paleontology and cryptozoology because that was somewhere where there were still mysteries left to solve. There were these fossils that were still yet to be found and maybe monsters yet to be discovered. I imagined myself as something of a modern-day Indiana Jones, traipsing around the globe, defying death, but instead of questing for ancient artifacts, I was questing for fossils and maybe the occasional cryptid still lurking out there in the world somewhere. Anything less than fame and fortune with this goal in mind felt like it would have been a failure. Now, my dad, both a man of science and a man of faith, actually encouraged me to have doubt when I got really excited reading things about stories of megalodons surviving in the deep oceans or ape men hiding in the remote mountains and forests of the world. Think critically, question the source, think about the motives, and look for the evidence. I also had a very different view of how life worked then than I do now, because my education regarding the topic of evolution only came from the pulpit of the church, not from the lectern of the high school, my public high school, which seemed too scared to broach the topic one way or another. So when I left for college in California, I was a self-professed born-again creationist. This was not a radical position in West Virginia, but for coastal California, I was in for a rude awakening. In the words of self-proclaimed Fresh Prince Willard Smith, my life got flipped, turned upside down. Now, by the time I started college, my focus had shifted, and thanks to a really engaging high school physics teacher, I actually declared my major as astrophysics. This meant that each quarter I had to take a physics course, a physics lab, a calculus course, and then one for fun class. My last quarter freshman year, I was getting pretty burnt out. I could tell that I wasn't the smartest kid in the room when it came to my physics and calculus classes. I was also getting the sense that maybe physicists weren't my tribe, the people I was meant to spend my career with. And then I was still really dealing with the culture shock of being a kid from Appalachia in a primarily Californian crowd of my university. So for my blow-off class that term, I signed up for a course that in itself would end up changing the course of my entire life: the natural history and evolution of dinosaurs. The professor Hildy Schwartz was the first person to explain to me how evolution actually worked. Her tone was matter-of-fact, never confrontational, just sort of like, here's how it all fits together. And like Saul on the road to Damascus, the scales fell from my eyes and I could finally see. The case she made by weaving together the tapestry of dinosaurian relationships was unambiguous and convincing, but also profoundly unsettling. The truth was clear. If the truth was this clear and accessible, then why had the moral arbiters of truth in the church been lying to me all this time? Folks usually respond to that by saying, well, they were telling you the truth as they understood it and as they believed it. But to me, that doesn't quite work, because it's kind of like if you and I were arguing about the color of a house, and I said it's green and you said it's orange, and then we said, okay, let's go take a look at the house, and as we round the corner and we start to see an orange house, I cover my eyes and go, I still believe it's green, I still believe it's green. To me, denying evidence that's right in front of you to maintain a belief that may or may not be true felt a lot like lying. You can disagree with me on that, but at the time, I had this really real sense of betrayal. So what does this have to do with cryptozoology? Cryptozoology and creationism have one major thing in common. They both think that science is wrong and they're here to prove it. They play the role of antagonist, and that's their goal. Now, in some cases, the two worldviews overlap to the point where you actually have pastors in the jungles of the Congo looking for Mokele Mbembe, which is thought to be a sauropod that survived to modern times. I actually met with this pastor when he was here in town for a talk, and we discussed his expeditions. Because to me, and what I explained to him, one of the great ironies of his expedition was that the greatest discovery in cryptozoology already happened in that same part of the Congo, the African unicorn. This was an animal that had been described by the locals, told to European explorers, and eventually discovered by the British governor of Uganda. It's now seen in zoos today as the okapi, a relative of the giraffe. When confronted with this story, he said that the sauropod he was looking for was smaller and maybe lived in the water or dug burrows. I told him that as far as we knew, sauropods couldn't live in water, and we have no evidence for their burrows. And so when I asked what was going on, he said, well, maybe it's adapted to its environment. And then he caught himself because he realized what he was about to conclude, and we both kind of agreed to move on. So because this pastor and so many other creationists believe that if they can find dinosaurs, they'll show that science is wrong. And here's the dirty secret. They're right. A living sauropod would show that one aspect of science, or how we understand the life in this world, is wrong. But that's the part where here's the part where the twist in the story happens. Science is wrong all the time. That's part of the process. A living sauropod, a pterodactyl, or a gigantopithecus are not the straws that break this camel's back. You know who's going to be really excited if we find any of those things? Me. That's me in this scenario. And every other paleontologist and biologist I know will be thrilled too, because it means we've got all this new data to play with and lots of work left to do. This work may lead to revisions in the theory of evolution, but that's how the game is played. Discovering new things that challenge our previous notions is a feature of good research, not a bug. Being wrong is not an abominable sin in science. And as to my relationship with cryptozoology, now that I'm a working scientist, well, to quote the scriptures, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, and I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. It all comes back to the lesson my dad taught me over and over and over again. Think critically, question the source and the motive, look for the evidence. Most importantly, face the challenges head on and be ready to change your mind. Thank you.